Today's day starts like most others, 7:30 in the morning. Oh man, that's bright. 18 degrees, and I am on my way to the MRT station. And the first thing I like to do is to get rid of the change in my pocket. Time to top up the yo-yo card.
Yeah,
no kidding.
现金投入完成后，请入加值键。
You got 505 on the card. Got $30 in my pocket. So that should be 535.
请勿移动，请取回票卡。
It is 535. All right. We're heading north today to the Ecological Park stop, something like that. One thing about me is I don't get too involved in the details. I don't know the street names and the subway stops off by heart. I think I know where I'm going though. And our journey begins at the Ecological District station. First thing we have to do is get a bike that'll take us to our real starting point. This is called the Smile Park. It's a great name for a park. It's a linear park. It leads to the Ziyo market. It's an afternoon market, which we will check out at some point. We're going to start our journey today at the Golden Lion Lake and at a Taoist-Buddhist temple. This neighborhood is important, and this temple is important to our overall theme today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Japan-Taiwan relations and history. But before we get to our destination, there's a few places we have to stop by on the way, and this is one of them. I was going to stop and have breakfast somewhere in that little neighborhood before I set off on today's adventure, but I didn't see anything, and the bike parking spot was right at where I wanted to begin, so we'll eat later. The great thing about Taiwan is you can always find something to eat. You don't have to worry about that sort of stuff, ever. So our story begins here at this Buddhist Taoist temple. This is more of a Taoist temple than a Buddhist temple. And frankly, I don't really know what the difference is. And if you can combine two temples together, but they seem to do this a little bit in Taiwan. From my understanding, the Buddhist temples are much more serene and quieter, and the Taoist temples tend to be a lot noisier, with more activities, more fireworks, more burning ghost money, more, not sure you call it with these big tents, more banquets, I guess you'd say. We're gonna go over and take a quick look at the Butterfly Museum before we continue on our journey. On the way, we should talk about what we're gonna see today, or why we're going here. To get to where we're going today, we have to get on the other side of this highway, which means getting to the north end of this park and then figuring it out after that. And when I first came to Taiwan back in 1989, I moved up into the mountains of Waishuangxi. And then, like now, I used to like hiking. And I used to, in the morning, put on my headphones and listen to Chinese language learning tapes. And I'd go up to the top of the mountain and around the back. And at the top of the mountain, there's always all these old people exercising. And what was fascinating to me, having no idea about Chinese history, was that they were speaking Japanese. This was 1989. So they were the last of the Japanese speakers. And back then, people didn't like to talk about the Japanese colonial period, mostly because the KMT government discouraged it. The nationalist government did not like the Japanese at all. They were arch enemies. They fought a civil war in China for many, many years. And they carried that through into their I was going to say occupation of Taiwan. I don't want to get too political here. So the story of Japan, Taiwan begins in the mid to late 1800s. This is from memory, so I'm not an expert on this. It's just stuff I've learned from podcasts and reading the plaques. But back around 1870 or so, there was some Japanese sailors who got shipwrecked off the coast of eastern Taiwan, somewhere between Yilan and Hualien, modern day Yilan and Hualien. They got shipwrecked, and they came ashore, and the Aboriginal headhunters killed them. The Japanese were not very happy about that, so they demanded some kind of payment from the Qing dynasty. The Qing dynasty answered, well, we don't really control that part of Taiwan, so we're not going to give you anything. And the Japanese thought, oh, you don't claim this part of Taiwan? Well, in that case, we kind of like Taiwan, and I think maybe we're going to take it. And they laid plans to do just that. As an aside, those Japanese sailors weren't even Japanese. They were Okinawan, And at that point in history, Okinawa was not part of Japan. It was kind of a protectorate. But that's an aside. So you get shipwrecked and then headhunted by Aborigines. Talk about a bad day. If you're ever having a bad day, just think what a bad day those Okinawan sailors were having. So fast forward a decade or three, and Japan and Russia and China are fighting over Korea and northern China, Manchuria. And one thing leads to another. And Japan gets Taiwan in a treaty. Japan's pretty happy about this. And of course, it wasn't all wine and roses between the Japanese and the Han Chinese that were on Taiwan. There was some brutal suppression, and the Japanese separated themselves from the local population at first. But the Japanese also came along at the right time, because they developed Taiwan, the education system, railroads, sugar and rice. Taiwan had really been neglected by the Qing dynasty, and Japan came in and saw the potential and exploited it. So here's our first destination today. This is the tomb of Da Ping. I'll tell you a little bit about him. So this guy arrived in Taiwan in 1896, the year after Taiwan became a colony of Japan. And he was a businessman. He started the Kaohsiung ice factory, and then a transportation company. He was also on the city council. There weren't a lot of businessmen in Taiwan, at least for the first 10, 20 years. It was all government sponsored. The government came first and set up the railways and the other infrastructure, and then encouraged business people to follow. In the early years, the Japanese kept themselves pretty separated from the local Taiwanese population. But after the schools were set up, they encouraged parents to send their children to the Japanese schools for a Japanese education, which could lead to working for the empire and either a government job or a good job somehow in the new Japanese economy. This is our second tomb. I don't know what's up with these golf balls. So that guy was referred to as one of the 5 tigers of Yanquan. And Yanquan is the district that's down near the harbor, Dago, Japanese. He set up a medicine store and a Buddhist charity and a credit union. So I guess he was pretty benevolent, all in all. One thing I'd like to point out is all right, this is interesting. Another golf ball. It's all becoming clear to me now. Our final destination today is going to be the new park, the Kaohsiung Green Park, which recently got converted from a golf course. Now the golf balls make sense. This is going to be a hard lie. As I was saying, these tombs have all been moved from another cemetery, which I'm not going to visit. And I know it's nearby, but too many ghosts. I'm a little bit superstitious. Frankly, I don't think there's going to be very much interesting to see at the old golf course new green park. I had a couple of comments suggesting I visit it, but maybe only because it's new. Take a look. I don't know. We'll take a look. Truth is, I don't really like golf. Golf is a way to ruin a good walk. This looks suspiciously like a golf course. Suspiciously like a golf course. It is. It's the 14th hole. There it is. How about that? You know, there was another tomb that I was going to visit up here. But you know what? You've seen one, you've seen them all. Not really a culture vulture. I got the general gist of the history. The last guy, similar story, arrived 1903. Benevolent. Whatever. It's weird being on a golf course. Let's go bathrooms. It's an interesting park. I wonder why it closed. So I don't know how Japan feels about Taiwan. I'd love to talk to some Japanese people and see what they know about the history and how they feel about Taiwan as a former colony. I know that there's a large Japanese community in Taiwan, in the mountains near Puli, I understand. They like it there. And as for the Taiwanese, their feelings about Japan are a little bit hard to discern as well. I've asked people and they always hesitate. I think they feel that Japan was good to them, but I think like anyone who's been colonized, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say shame, but a little bit of hard feelings about being colonized. I think that would be fair. The truth is, I mean, long story short, Taiwan was neglected by the Qing dynasty. Japan saw it as an opportunity. They exploited it. but they also brought it into the 20th century. Overall, they were probably good for Taiwan. Here's a hot take. I personally don't think that Taiwan should have been handed over to the Chinese at the end of World War II. Japan had Taiwan for 50 years. It wasn't because of World War II that they had it. And just because they lost the war, they lost Taiwan. I don't know, what do you think? I think if you ask any Taiwanese person their feeling about the Japanese colonial era, they'll mostly have fond thoughts about that time. But part of this is just looking at the past with rose-colored glasses. I mean, you ask anybody and they'll always say, oh, life was better back then. No matter when back then was. I think life was better when this was the golf course. It's actually a great place to walk around, though. I'd like to live near here. Part of the problem with Taiwan, Japan history is that the nationalist government did its very best to reverse or to erase Japanese culture from Taiwan. They did it because they just fought a war against Japan and they hated the Japanese. So I guess it's understandable. And I don't want to excuse the atrocities that the nationalist government inflicted on the Taiwanese people when they first came to Taiwan in the late 40s after World War II. But if you could see it through their eyes, you arrive on a province, and that province is filled with people who look and act a lot like the people you've been fighting for the last 30 years. I honestly didn't think this park could be quite so popular. I mean, whoop-de-doo, it's an old golf course and a huge park. But there's people everywhere. I don't know if I should have said all that about the Taiwanese and the Japanese and about the nationalist government as well. I'm no expert on the matter, that's for sure. And I don't want to be insensitive. I am just a visitor here. These are just my thoughts, and you can disagree with them. And I know that a lot of Taiwanese people like to watch my videos. They like to watch all foreigners in Taiwan videos, it seems. And I think part of the reason for that is because Taiwan is still a little bit unsure of its identity. Ooh. Coffins on a truck. And here's where we pick up a U-bike at the Grand Hotel. Someone asked me earlier today why I was walking and not riding my bike. This is why. It's open-ended. I can go anywhere. Walk, walk, ride, ride, grab the MRT. So simple. I like living a life with no real plans. Just kind of sketch things out to where you think you might want to go.